To understand Alpine's collapse in 2025, you must first understand that Formula One teams rarely implode because of a single mistake. They collapse because hundreds of small cracks go unaddressed, because internal fractures spread faster than technical fixes, because leadership dithers while rivals sharpen their knives, and because a team that once believed in its identity suddenly stops believing in anything at all. Alpine's downfall in 2025 was one of the most dramatic implosions modern F1 has seen, not because the team lacked resources, talent, or history, but because every structural weakness that had been ignored for years finally detonated at the same moment. From the outside, the collapse looked sudden. From the inside, it was inevitable. The first root of Alpine's downfall was the chronic instability in leadership, a problem that had haunted the team long before 2025. Since the Renault rebrand era of the mid-2000s, the organization cycled through bosses, engineers, and political factions with the frequency of a team fighting for survival, rather than a manufacturer aiming for championships. Team principals came and went. Technical directors arrived with grand plans only to be replaced months later. Internal power struggles between Viry, the engine division, and Enstone, the chassis division, formed a philosophical Cold War that prevented any unified development direction. Instead of building a cohesive identity, the kind that powers Red Bull, Mercedes, or McLaren, Alpine existed in a state of perpetual reinvention. By the time 2025 arrived, the damage was irreversible. The team lacked a singular voice. No one owned the project. No one commanded the technical narrative. And in Formula One, when leadership splinters, results follow. The second reason for Alpine's collapse was the performance ceiling of their power unit. For years, whispers in the paddock suggested that the Renault hybrid power unit lagged behind its rivals. Alpine repeatedly insisted that the performance gap was closed or manageable. But those of us who walked the garages and compared GPS overlays knew the truth. Alpine's engine was consistently underpowered, suffered from inefficient energy deployment, and lacked the thermal robustness necessary for aggressive race strategies. By 2025, the gap had become terminal. Mercedes improved. Honda RBPT refined its architecture. Ferrari stabilized its power unit gains. Even the much-maligned Audi-prepared systems showed surprising efficiency improvements. Alpine stood still. Their engine philosophy had reached a dead end, and without a complete redesign, they were shackled to the lower midfield. The third element of Alpine's downfall was a disastrous aerodynamic concept, born from a technical department that never found coherence. The 2025 chassis lacked rear stability, overheated its tires, and produced inconsistent aerodynamic load across varying track temperatures. Alpine's wind tunnel correlation issues, the bane of any F1 operation, resurfaced with devastating consequences. Upgrades that looked promising in CFD simply failed to generate real-world performance. Some even made the car slower. While other teams improved their correlation tools, Alpine remained stuck with legacy methodologies and internal disagreements on design philosophies. Engineers didn't trust the data, drivers didn't trust the car, and the leadership didn't trust the engineers. It was a vortex of uncertainty. This brings us to the fourth factor, the fracture between Enstone and Viry. Renault's unique structure, with the chassis built in the UK and the engine in France, had always been a logistical challenge, but in 2025 it became an open wound. Communication pipelines collapsed, design deadlines slipped, blame circulated like oxygen. Each side claimed the other was sabotaging progress. Enstone said Viry refused to modernize. Viry claimed Enstone lacked aerodynamic direction. Both were right, both were wrong, and neither could fix the problem. Meanwhile, Alpine's rivals, Sauber, Audi, McLaren, Mercedes, operated as unified organisms. Alpine functioned like two separate kingdoms bound by corporate necessity rather than racing ambition. The fifth pillar of the collapse was the talent drain. Alpine bled engineering talent at an alarming rate. Over the years, some of their brightest aerodynamicists and system specialists were poached by Red Bull, Aston Martin, McLaren, and even newcomers like Audi. Why? Because Alpine no longer offered stability, direction, or upward mobility. Engineers left not because they lacked passion, but because they lacked hope. Inside Alpine, those remaining faced overwhelming workloads, unclear priorities, and a political minefield that made innovation risky. A team cannot fight for points, let alone victories, when its technical staff operate in fear or frustration. And then there were the drivers. Alpine's 2025 driver pairing, once seen as promising, became collateral damage of the internal chaos. No driver on the grid can excel when the machinery beneath them shifts unpredictably from week to week. The 2025 Alpine did not offer consistency, confidence, or competitiveness. Its characteristics changed drastically between sessions, leaving drivers guessing rather than strategizing. Brake feel, balance, traction, and tire degradation varied wildly. No amount of skill can overcome instability baked into the DNA of a flawed car. But the deepest reason for Alpine's collapse, the one that every insider quietly recognized, was the absence of a long-term, coherent vision. While McLaren built patiently, while Mercedes recalibrated its philosophy, while Audi invested strategically, Alpine drifted. They spoke about winning titles, yet operated like a team terrified of taking risks. They announced 5-year plans every 2 years, each contradicting the last. They lacked conviction. Formula One punishes indecision more than it punishes mistakes. Renault's corporate leadership also failed to protect the team from political turbulence. There was no Todt-like shield, no Wolff-like general, no Horner-like figure to unify the organization. Alpine was governed by committees, subcommittees, and overlapping departments. You cannot win Grand Prix with bureaucracy. Meanwhile, the timeline to the 2026 regulations loomed like a guillotine. Every smart team prepared for the biggest rule reset in a decade. Alpine, hindered by chaos, could not focus. Their 2025 car became a Band-Aid instead of a stepping stone. They fell behind, not by tenths, but by philosophies. By mid-season, the collapse became public. Poor results, visible tension, critical comments, resignations, restructuring. The entire organization underwent an identity crisis. Fans saw an underperforming car. Insiders saw a house with a cracked foundation collapsing under its own weight. So why did Alpine collapse in 2025? Because a modern F1 team cannot function without unity. Because leadership instability corrodes performance. Because technical departments cannot disagree their way into progress. Because an underpowered engine suffocates ambition. Because aerodynamic inconsistency kills development. Because bureaucracy kills innovation. Because talent drained away faster than it could be replaced. Because Alpine forgot what it meant to be a racing team. Their fall was not a mechanical failure, it was a philosophical one. And now, as 2026 approaches, the question looming over both Enstone and Viry is brutal. Can Alpine rebuild in time for the new era, or has the team already lost its future? If history has taught us anything, from Lotus to Williams to Toyota, it is that once a team loses its identity, recovery is not guaranteed. Alpine must decide if it wants to survive. In Formula One, collapse is not the end. Failing to fix it is.